It may be the biggest fraud ever perpetrated by one brother against another. And yet, the faith has come down to us not through the innocent brother, but through the deceitful one. It's a thought worth pondering. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, October 17th, 2022. The story of Isaac seems largely to depict him as a bridge between the story of Abraham and the story of Jacob and his sons. Isaac's story takes up just a few chapters, and for the most part, he is acted upon rather than being the one to carry the action. This is nowhere more true than the story of the blessing which Jacob stole from his brother Esau. In this story, Isaac is tricked not only by Jacob, but also by his scheming wife, Rebekah. The story is far too long to read here, so I'll hit the highlights. The story literally begins with the birth of the fraternal twins, Jacob and Esau, or should we rather say Esau and Jacob, since Esau arrived first, thus the firstborn. In the story of their birth, we read that when Esau was born, Jacob's little hand was holding on to his brother's heel, as if to make sure his brother wouldn't get away from him. As the two boys grew up, one became the prototypical outdoorsy type. Esau was burly and loved to hunt, and he was his father's favorite. Jacob, on the other hand, was more of a homebody, preferring to stay indoors. He was his mother's favorite. And with that description, we know things are going to turn out a little strange. The story quickly jumps ahead to the time when the two brothers have grown up. In this brief story, we find that Jacob has stayed at home cooking a stew while his brother Esau has been out hunting. When Esau returns home from his hunt, he's starving. He asks Jacob for some of the good-smelling stew. Jacob, often rightly called the trickster, demands something in exchange. First, sell me your birthright. I am about to die, replies Esau. Of what use is a birthright to me? And with that, Esau gives away his birthright, which was his future position as leader of the family following Isaac's death. The story then turns to Isaac and his settling among the Philistines during a famine. After this brief narrative detour, we return to the story of Jacob and Esau. The writer tells the story in detail, so we know something of its importance. The sum of it is that Rebekah wants to see her favorite child, Jacob, receive his father's blessing, which would come with Isaac's property. The blessing, in other words, was much like we would consider a will. It specified who would receive the family assets, only instead of an equitable division of assets, it was the practice of the time for the eldest son to receive all of the father's assets after his death. So while Esau has given away his birthright, he could still expect to receive his father's blessing and the inheritance of Isaac's estate that went with it. Rebekah concocts a scheme to trick Isaac into unwittingly giving the blessing to Jacob, even though it was Esau's by natural right, and in spite of the fact that Esau was Isaac's favorite. But there is also one little detail often overlooked here. It's not just that Rebekah favors Jacob. It's that Esau has taken a wife from among the local populace, a Hittite woman, something not done in their family. He would have been expected to marry among his own people. And if that weren't enough, we get a hint of friction between Rebekah and Esau's new wife. So, is Rebekah acting out of spite for her daughter-in-law, or is she acting to protect the family? Hard to know, and the writer doesn't tip his hand in the matter either way. But what happens is that Isaac instructs Esau to go out and hunt some game, then come and make a stew for him so he can give him his blessing. But while he's out hunting, Rebekah sees her chance. She instructs Jacob to bring her a couple of kids from the flock, which she uses to make a stew for Isaac. Then she dresses Jacob in animal skins so he would feel hairy, and puts on one of Esau's robes so that he would smell like Esau. When she finishes the stew, she sends Jacob into Isaac's tent where he impersonates Esau. But because Isaac is blind, he can't tell that he's being tricked. We know that his suspicions are raised, for he recognizes the voice as Jacob's, but acknowledges that the clothes smell like Esau. And when he touches his son's hands, he feels the animal fur, which convinces him that this is Esau. And with that, he gives Jacob the family blessing. No sooner has this happened than Esau returns from the hunt, prepares a stew for his father, and comes into the tent to serve it and receive the blessing he fully expects. When he learns the truth, that Jacob has stolen it, he is justifiably angry, pleading with his father to take the blessing back, or at least give him a share in it. Crushed but resolute, Isaac explains to Esau that once the blessing has been given, there is no taking it back. Sensing danger from Esau's anger, Rebekah has one more ruse. She asks Isaac to send Jacob back to Haran to find a wife for him from among their own people there. And with that, Jacob leaves, not to return for many years. But the damage is done. Esau, the elder brother, is deprived of birthright by his own thick-headedness and hunger, and his blessing by the trickery of his mother and brother. So why is this story so important? Why isn't it swept under the rug? Why is it so prominent? For the simple reason that it sets a pattern that is to be repeated throughout Scripture. That the ways of God are not the ways of human beings. Just as Abraham's oldest son Ishmael is not the one through whom God's blessing is transmitted, and Isaac's older son Esau is also not the one, so throughout the biblical story, the usual order of things in human culture is upended in God's kingdom. It's very often the younger, rather than the older, who receives a blessing. It is an early version of what I often call the great reversal. Tomorrow, the trickster meets his match. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.